la famille.
Very excited to be here today. We're going to talk about your personal brand. And when we work with clients on their personal brand, a lot of times I see the CEO or the co-founder's eyes kind of roll, like, oh, geez, this guy's trying to sell me something. And as a startup, your main goal is to make money. I mean, a lot of us are trying to do things that give back to the community, that do something different, that changes the way we do things. But at the end of the day, if you're not making money, you can't continue to do what you want to do. And if you're not going to make a lot of money, investors aren't going to invest in you, right? So at the core is making money. And so I want to start off by talking a little bit about why your personal brand directly affects the amount of money you're going to make. And just really quickly, clap your hands if you're a startup or you're going to be a startup soon. Any startups? Okay, a couple of you here. Has anyone here exited out of a company? Has that a successful exit or a buyout? Nobody yet. Okay, so good. So the goal is to make money. The goal is to move forward. And so whenever you're trying to think through something, you need to keep in mind who your ideal audience is today. And so today, our ideal audience for your personal brand is the customer, the person who could potentially buy your product. Now that could be, if it's a B2C consumer, this is somebody who's going to use their credit card and they're going to say, okay, I'm going to pay $18 a month to use your SaaS product. Or it's a marketplace and they want to use their credit card to exchange a service. The other person we're going to be looking at is a VC. Jim here was ranked number 1 on the Midas Touch list of top investors in the Silicon Valley. So these are the two people we're going to keep in mind today as we talk about your personal brand. So when you go to a customer or you go to a VC and you're asking for money, and I want to take this a step further. For the customer, we're also talking about a big client potentially. Maybe you guys want to partner with BNP Paribas or IBM or Cisco. You need to keep these people in mind as well. So they're also the people with the credit card. So when they look at you as a startup, I mean, obviously some of them want to work with you, either a customer or a VC. There's a couple plus sides that they see to working with startups, right? They're innovative. Hopefully they'll give them an advantage either against one of their competitors. If I use your product, I'm going to be able to be better in my business. You're going to help me sell things better. You're going to help me find the right client. So you're going to give me an advantage. Or if I'm a VC, you're going to help me with profits. You're going to bring in 10 times the value that I put into your company. Or if you're a B2C consumer, you're going to give me a benefit that I want, right? So these are the positives that they see when they're looking at a startup. But they also see negatives, right? Because you're a startup, right? You're risky. You don't have a track record. They're not sure how long you've been around. They're also worried, especially if it's a big corporate client. So at StringCan, we work a lot between big corporate clients and startups, and we kind of help the two cultures work amongst each other. They're worried you're going to be more work. You've never worked with a client like them. You don't understand the different processes that are required when you're a corporate person. And so they look at you and they see these problems, and they're worried that you're going to make them look bad. If I buy your product and the product doesn't work, I look like a fool. If I bring you into my organization and say, okay, this is the new SaaS product we need to use to engage all of our customers, and after a year you go under and it no longer exists, you look bad to your boss and your colleagues. Right? So they're taking a risk with you. And so there's this balance that they're going through. They're looking at you, and you're a startup, you're a baby, right? You're this little infant there, and they see some positives, and they see some negatives, and so they're looking at you online, and you've got your website. Everyone has their website ready. You might have one of those neat videos that goes through and explains exactly what your product is and how it works with some cartoon character. And then they do some other research on you, and Rude Baguette wrote an article about you guys 6 months ago. That is you, right? You are a baby when it comes to companies. And you're a baby and you're going to, IBM, a 105-year-old company, and they're looking at you and they're just like, yeah, no, I don't know how this is going to work. But then they look at you again and they still see the innovation, they see the advantage, they see the profit, but you're still a little baby. And in the back of their mind, they're thinking, okay, most startups fail. I'm not sure they're going to know how to work with us. And how is this going to look if it goes south, right? So if this doesn't work, how am I going to look? And so they want to work with you, but they don't want to work with you. And so what is the deciding factor on if that customer is going to click to buy, or that VC is going to give you the term sheet, or if the big partner is going to come in and work with you and give you access to their hundreds of customers? That defining factor, if you're the CEO, if you're the co-founder, is you. They're now going to be looking directly at you. And you're not a baby. You've been around for 35 years. They can look at what you've done. Do you have the capacity to keep this company moving forward? Do you have the ability to take my $500,000 in investment and turn it into $5 million? So you become the deciding factor in if this deal is going to go through, if the sale is going to go through. So going back to the money, your personal brand is a direct reflection of that. It's going to now influence that money that you move forward. And so I know this deeply, and we're going to get to that in just a minute. So has anyone seen the TV show Shark Tank in the US? You find it on YouTube. You guys are going to love it. It's on TV. And basically, there's 5 jurors. You got some really big guys there, and they're looking at these startups that come in, and they negotiate a deal for equity in real time. It happens on stage. It's really quick. It's great to get some tips and tricks on how to do a good pitch. So one of the famous juror members is Desmond John. He's got books. He's invested a lot of money. And something that he said really stuck with me. He said, I've come to learn that my initial investment is more about the person versus the product that I'm buying into. The person is more important than the product. I do a podcast called With a Mentor. And I sat down a few weeks ago with I can't remember his name, Mark Fournier, who is a partner at Serena Capital. And Mark was talking about how, as a VC, he sees hundreds of good ideas every day. Every day there's a good idea that comes across his desk. But what he doesn't see every day is a solid co-founder who he thinks can take that idea to the next step. So often I'm meeting with startups, and they're worried. They want me to sign an NDA so that I can learn about their startup that they've done nothing with. It's on paper. And I always have to explain to them, guys, your idea could be amazing, but the person behind it makes it happen. Because as a startup, you're going to pivot. You're going to have some stumbles. You're going to have some falls. It's the startuper, it's the co-founder that gets up and keeps it going. So when a VC is looking at you, they're looking at you and your product, but you is probably the most important part. And so because I'm a cowboy, I'm gonna quote a cowboy. You never get a second chance to make a first impression. Do you guys all know who Will Rogers is? He was a cowboy movie star back in the early 1900s. I love this because it's kind of funny to say. You never get a second chance to make a first impression. And over the last 10, 15 years, that first impression is hardly ever that handshake. This is rarely the first impression. How many of you knew my face before I got up here? Because you're like, who's this Jason McDonald guy? You went to my LinkedIn account, or you looked at me at Twitter. Anybody? Anyone look at me? Okay, a few. So very rarely do you get to control that first impression. Because if someone sends me an email, Jason, hey, I just met this startup. You should sit down with him. He's a really nice guy. Before I respond to that email, I don't want to waste my time. I'm going to look at this guy. I'm going to Google him. I'm going to look on LinkedIn. I'm going to check out what he's tweeting about. And so that first impression today is happening online. So when we get into the tips and tricks, this is for online, but it's also offline, and it's how you express yourself when you're with other people. So that first impression is happening online. So you need to make sure that you're controlling that first impression. So if you Google yourself today, what are the results? And are you happy with those results? And are those results expressing what you want it to express? Now, I Googled myself, and because my name is Jason McDonald and there's like 10 million of us in the US, I have to throw Paris on there. So if you throw Jason McDonald Paris, this is what shows up. Now, I'm not perfectly happy with that, right? I'm still working on getting Google to show exactly what I want to show, but it's not bad. I'm pretty happy with what happens. I own the top 10. I got a few videos on there. What is your personal first impression online? So you really need to be thinking about that. So let's get into a couple tips and tricks, okay? So I wrote an article in Rude Baguette last year, and I worked with a brand expert in the US called Robin Bramman. And so if you're following me on Twitter right now, that link's on there. You guys can check out that article. But really the first question you have to ask when you're deciding about your personal brand, because this is something that you need to control. This is something that you need to think through and you need to be able to express. It's not just haphazardly going out there and just, writing articles and maybe doing an event. You need to really think through what you're trying to express. And so the first question you really need to start to think about is, what do you want to be known for? And a good test for this is if I walked into the room, what's your name? Gerard. So if I walked and I found someone that knew you and I asked them, who is he? What would they tell me? Who are you? What's like that word that describes you? Are you a technologist, a developer, a co-founder, a startuper? A great guy and an engineer, okay? And so you really need to think through what you want to be known for. That's what you want to be known for, right? An engineer, a great guy?
Yeah, a great guy.
Mostly a great guy. I like this guy. He looks like a great guy. So you really need to think that through. How do people want to describe me? And so when people ask me, who's Jason? They're going to probably say, oh, he's a business consultant that does a lot of speaking, right? And so, okay, that's a good thing. The second thing you need to think through is what makes you unique. Because there's other Americans in town. There's other people that get up on stage. What makes you unique? What makes you unique from all the other good guys, right? So really sitting down and thinking that through is vitally important when you're looking online, because in my case, there's hundreds of Jasons McDonalds, right? There's hundreds of Americans in Paris. So you really have to start to think through what makes you different, and does that difference add value to the people that you're trying to engage with? Tip number 3, what skills, smarts, or attitude do you have that will make people want to work with you, follow, or friend you in real life or online? And so when you go, and the one I really like here is attitude. Because for me, the attitude is really, really important, especially when you're working with people. Is this person stress out when something difficult happens? Or is this person calm and cool and you can't rile them up? Is this person someone who is never mistaken for someone who doesn't think big enough, right? What is your attitude? That's something that's kind of hard it's hard to be tangible. It's hard to be tangible an article or an attitude. So one of the best ways to express that is through online. I mean, online makes it so easy today. And so when you start defining these things, people should be able to read a few of my articles, find some videos of me and understand what my attitude is, right? Get a sense of me. And online makes that so easy today. So if I started looking at you, if I Googled you and I started looking around, would I see that you were a good guy, you think? He's really regretting sitting in the front row today. Sorry about that. Yeah, so hopefully they would see this is a good guy, right? So you need to be able to express that attitude and that skill. And also what makes you different. And I think that's hard sometimes, right? Because, we're all working in similar industries. And so sitting down and really talking through with, one of the best people. So I work with the brand expert, and I had these ideas. Okay, this is what I want to be known for. This is what I want to be smart about. This is how I want people to think about my attitude. And then I took it to the best 2 people you can possibly take this to. Sit down once you've written this out, and I sat across from my wife, and I explained it to her. And she tore it apart. She said, nope, that's not you, that's you. Talk more about this. And then I shared it with my mom. Who knows you better than mom, right? So really test these things out and make sure that you're not exaggerating the truth there. Number 4, how can you help others? And I think this is so important because people need to understand that if they engage with you, what are they going to get back? What is the value that you can bring to the relationship? It's a simple concept, but a lot of times I find that when I'm working with founders or business leaders, they haven't thought through, how I can help others. They're always thinking, how can people help me? How can I grow my company? Instead of how can I help others succeed? And when that starts to happen, when you start helping others succeed, they're going to want to turn around and help you as well. So what sort of contribution makes you feel satisfied? This is so important because it's not only about your personal brand, it's about you waking up every day and going to work, okay? So what drives you? And I like to, I always tell people when you're starting a business, a startup's not a 2-year thing. It's not a 3-year thing. I did an event with Frank Loewe, who was one of the founders of Criteo. He talks about, this took us 7, 8, 9 years to get this thing really going. We had to pivot several times. It's a hard slog. So what gets you motivated to wake up in the morning? What makes you satisfied? And can you continue to do that over and over? And once you understand that, that's probably the business you should be working in, but also you want to express that to other people, and you want to express that within your brand so that people come to you and you can share that satisfaction with them. So I wanted to, because I talk a lot about the US, because a lot of companies, as they grow, they're thinking globally from day one. They're thinking, okay, the US is probably in our future if we're going to be successful, or if they're a startup that's already moving and grooving and it's got traction, they're thinking, okay, it's probably time to think about a flip in the US. So I want to give you a couple tips about the US, okay? The first one is, and this is hard, right? But don't focus on where you went to school. So for those of you who didn't go to a Grandes Écoles, this is great, right? Because in France it's such a big deal. But for those of you who did, I'm going to tell you a little story. It was shocking to me when I came to France and I would meet like 50-year-old men who within 2 minutes of talking with me would drop that they went to INSEAD or ESSEC. And I've only been here a few months. I have no idea what they're talking about. And then someone explains to me, oh, it's the school they went to. He's like 50. He hasn't done anything since he went to school. As an American, the schools are a lot less important. I mean, if you went to Harvard, yeah, drop that in. But it's just not as important because what we're looking at is really, what have you done since school? How are you going to bring me value today? I don't care if you got an A in psychology. I care if we work together, can we make money? So when you're looking at your personal brand, don't focus too much on the schooling if you're planning on going to the US. The second one on the English list is your online footprint needs to be in English, right? I mean, if you're coming to me and you're telling me you want to be a CEO in the US and all the information I can find about you is in French, it's going to be a big turnoff. And I know that's not easy, but it's doable in France now to get content out, for you to blog about, for you to talk, to be on stage, and to do something in English. So right now, does anyone, whose LinkedIn account is in English? Raise your hand. All right, so it looks like some of you need to start translating. LinkedIn's your main reference, right? And that's going to be for doing business in Germany, doing business in Spain. You're limiting yourself to just France if your online footprint is in English. So this one, I think, is vitally important to your online success. And you need references. When you're building your company, you need to put that logo of the companies you've worked with. The companies, remember the little baby up there? If you can stamp that baby with a reference, it makes the baby look a little bit older, right? It makes the baby look a little less risky. And so I see something I think a lot of French companies don't think through is that they'll spend a lot of time and effort focused on getting a big French corporation. And they even have cats walking around here? This place is really cool. So you spend a lot of time as a startup or as a person, trying to get associated with big brands, big companies, big things that will validate you, that will say, hey, we've worked with this person is quality. And in France, you'll spend a lot of time and you'll sign a deal with EDF. Wow, all right, yes. You'll sign a deal with BNP, great. But then as soon as you get out of France, nobody knows what EDF is in Silicon Valley. I mean, they might have, okay, great. But if you would have gotten that deal with GE in France, even the GE team here in France, that goes with you around the world. And so I think trying to find international brands that you can associate yourself with are worth their weight in gold because it travels with you. Even if it was the French entity of an international company that people know, it's very important. So when you're building your outreach approach, when you're trying to build your online brand, your online company, it's really important to think that through because I think a lot of times that's missed. It's just as difficult to get a deal with a big French brand as it is an American brand, so why not go after the American brand? And so that's actually, I'm going to talk about that in a second, but we started an association to try to help some French companies do that because it really does help you when you're trying to grow. And also, I was having lunch the other day with Marc Rogier, who's he's a startupper. Well, he's done lots of startups. He's a founder of Scoopit, and now he's a partner at ISA Capital. And he was telling me that, really you're not going to get any funding ever in the US unless you have some traction in the US. And so this right here, this reference is going to help show that you have some traction and help that greater expansion as you guys grow. You guys still with me? Yeah, all right. So networking, okay. Does anyone like networking? Nobody likes networking. We have one networker here. So it's interesting for me, networking, I'm always looking at it differently now since I've been in France because I think our American culture, it's just a little easier. I don't know why. We like talking, I think. But the French, I always get this feedback from my staff and from clients, I really don't like networking. But networking is key. It's key to your personal brand because these people are going to grow your online brand, but they're also going to grow your personal brand. So let's imagine, I'm looking around the room and I only know a few faces. So I'm in a new circle right now. And so if one of you is at an event next week and you're talking to someone, you said, hey, this American guy, I can't remember his first name, but his last name was McDonald. I'll never forget that. He was talking about personal branding and he made this point. I thought it was interesting. And that person, they say, oh yeah, Jason, yeah, I've seen him. He's a good guy, right? You just double validated what you guys are thinking. But if that person goes, oh, geez, I can't stand that guy. He talks too much. Okay, what did that just do? I just spent all this time preparing a presentation, coming to the family and speaking to you, and my personal brand has just been completely shattered, right? Because you just heard from somebody else that I'm a jerk, right? So networking is really important to know people, for those people to validate you, for those people to understand those 5 first tips that I went through about you. So they can say, yeah, oh yeah, I know Jason. He works with companies that want to go to the US. Jason's a board member at the American Chamber of Commerce. He's a good guy, right? Like that's what I want people to say about me, because the second validation is very important. That's why we look at reviews before we buy a book, right? You're looking for someone else to validate what you're looking at. So I'm going to give you 2 tips today on how to network. And these are the only 2 things you need to know about networking, and not only will you start to like it, you'll get better at it and you'll get more out of it. So you guys want me to tell you those two steps? Just making sure everyone's with me. I know it's lunch, you guys are hungry. So the first one is focus on learning something new. A lot of times when people are networking, they're thinking, what can I get out of this interaction? You walk up, you have the business card, and you're thinking, I need this person to understand what I need as soon as possible. When you flip that, and you walk up to someone and you say, what do you do? And you're now looking at it as an opportunity to learn something. It completely flips the conversation. Now that conversation is easy because that person wants to talk about what they're doing, right? That's the goal of the networking, they think. And so they're going to talk about it, and you have the opportunity to learn something. And so, oh, what do you do? Oh, you're in cognitive computing. What's that? Just break down all barriers. You don't know anything about it? That's fine. Tell them that. They're going to explain it to you. Oh, really? What's your market research on that? When do you think that's going to come to market? And you just start asking them questions. You really get to learn what they're doing. And then 10 minutes later, when you meet someone who says, yeah, I'm looking at investing in companies. We're trying to find a cognitive company. Oh, hey, you got to meet this guy over here because you understand what he does, right? So you've all been in those conversations when you walk up and you're like, oh, what are you doing here? And you both kind of want to talk about yourselves. When you look at it as, I want to learn something, it flips the conversation and makes it easy. It takes the stress out of networking. You're there to learn, right? You're not there to share who you are. You're there to learn. And the second thing you're looking at is try to give back when you're networking. So if you go in with these 2 mindsets, try to learn something and try to give back, it's going to completely take the stress out of networking because you're listening to them, you're learning. In the back of the head, you're thinking, okay, who do I know should meet this person? How can I help this guy, meet someone that would maybe be useful to him? And so that person's going to say something and you go, you know what? I have a friend who is looking for a job and he just graduated with a degree in AI and he's looking to do something like this. Are you guys looking for developers? Oh, you are? Oh, let me connect you guys. Okay, so not only did you just help your friend who just got out of school, but you helped this new guy you just met who's looking for developers. And all of a sudden, you've kind of created this network, right? That's what a network is. A network isn't you going around giving out business cards. A network is growing the people around you, the understanding of what they do and how you can connect them with one another. And when you get to that position, eventually they're going to look at you and go, what do you do? And at that point, they're listening. Because you just spent all the time listening to them. When they finally ask you, what do you do? They're now listening and they're actually going to remember what you tell them. I mean, how many times have you been in that situation when you're doing the network and you do the business card? Oh, yeah, we should get together. Put it in your back pocket. Next day you pull it out and you're like, oh, what was this? I don't remember this guy. Because you weren't listening. And they're not listening to you either. So when you wait until they ask you what you do, you've completely flipped that. And this takes all the stress out of networking. I promise you. Try it out when we're done. Okay? No one's going to know what anyone else does because you'll all be asking, no, but what do you do? What do you do? The last tip I want to give you, are we doing okay on time? Perfect, all right. The last tip is get on stage early and often, okay? Getting on stage is important. So you see right over here, we got a Forbes article here, and we have my friend Tatiana on stage. Getting on stage is a great way to touch a lot of people at the same time, and it's a great way for you to express that personal brand that you're talking about. So obviously I'm on stage because I'm working on my personal brand. But it's also a way to give back. And so there's a lot of startup competitions. There's a lot of pitch, don't kill my vibe, I think is what they call it here at the family. There's lots of great ways for you to get on stage and to do it early and often. And why do I say early and often? Do it before your startup's even ready because you want to get that practice in before it's really important. You don't want to get that opportunity to stand on stage at the most important pitch competition that you're ever going to be on stage for, and it's the first time you've ever pitched your product. Anywhere you can find the opportunity to pitch your company or your product, do it. It's going to build your personal brand. It's going to make you better, and it's going to really help you out. So I'm going to talk about Tatiana. She's awesome. If you haven't met her yet, she's really dynamic. They've already successfully exited once. Now they're working on the Selectionist. This is her at a pitch competition that my association NextGen put on. It was a global expansion pitch competition. So she was talking about why her company was ready to go to the US. And so she's standing in front of 5 very influential judges now who understand her business model perfectly. She got an article in Forbes. She is now United Airlines is paying for her to go to New York and speak at the French Touch Conference. At the French Touch Conference, she's going to be in front of a big room full of people, and she gets to do it again. DLA Piper, one of the sponsors, is going to give her 6 months of free consulting for her to go to the U.S. Spark Labs is going to put them up in their incubator in New York. Her jumping on stage is going to affect her company. It's going to make her company accelerate faster into the U.S. So there's these types of opportunities. Everyone's always looking at winning, right? But let's talk about the 7 startups who got on stage that day that didn't. Well, now that entire room full of businessmen from the American Chamber of Commerce understand what they do. One of the startups, I'm not going to throw out names and stuff, but one of the startups that got up on stage, they were in the final 4. I now know that they are talking actively with one of the companies who had a judge on stage about a contract. So they didn't win the competition, but now they've got a deal going, possibly with a big corporate client. So getting on stage, there's never anything bad about it. And I know a lot of people have a lot of angoisse, what's the word for it? Fear about getting on stage. It's hard, especially doing it in another language. I'm doing it in English today, super simple. I'm not sweating, I'm not stumbling, I'm not shaking. If this was in French, I'd be sweating, shaking, uncomfortable. It's hard, I know that, but practice and get up as early and often as you can because it really builds your personal brand. It gives you content. Now when you Google her, there's an article in Forbes magazine about her, right? There's 2 of them actually. So really think that through, really try your best to get up on stage. I meet a lot of founders who think it's a waste of time to get involved with all the competitions and get up on stage. It's not. It's building your personal brand. It's giving you an opportunity to pitch your product. And when you pitch a product, usually people give you feedback on that product and you can make that product better. So I'm a big fan of case studies. So I live what I preach, I promise you. So I want to walk you through what we just went through from my perspective, okay? Now, when I came to France in June 2013, I knew one person. It's me and my wife in the rain in France trying to figure out where to go. That was my network. That was my personal brand in France. Nobody knew me, right? My level of French, I could order dinner, kinda, right? And so I employed this. And actually, Robin, who I wrote the article with in Rue Baguette, right before I came over, we worked on this. What was my personal brand? What am I gonna, what are we doing over in France? And so I'm gonna go through point by point. We had a hard time when my team and I were discussing this presentation to not be a 100% self-promoter and do this, but I want to show you guys exactly what I did. So please excuse me if it starts to sound a little bit So the first one here is understand what you want to be known for. And so for me, I wanted to be an expert in the US market. Okay? So what was the first thing I started doing is I started offering my time to organizations I thought would have people that were looking to go to the US. And so I do a lot of work with the Chambre de Commerce et Industrie de Paris. I help a lot of their companies that are getting ready to go to the US. I work with the American Chamber of Commerce, which has companies that are looking to go. And so right away, I started telling people, if you're getting ready to go to the US, come talk to StringCan. So what makes me unique? So what I love about this is because what makes me unique here didn't make me unique at all in the US, but because we're not in the US, it makes me unique here. I'm American, I like to do public speaking, and I'm very, very open. And so that means that if you email me, we're probably going to meet for coffee. If you tweet with me, I'm going to respond. So we're very open. We wanted to be very, very open. We wanted people to feel like they had a lot of access. So what skill, attitude, all these different things, Google me. I mean, you're going to find but what we really tried to do is I've got a big affection for France, and it's not fake. I really do love this country. I'm in the process of becoming a citizen, hopefully, before the next elections. I'd love to vote. En marche. I have a deep belief in the digital tech scene, and that's something that has just been amazing to watch over the last 3 years. This tech scene just exploding in France. And so now, doing these things, I have the opportunity. I'm going to be at the French Touch Conference in June. They're letting me host their startup competition. I've got some meetings set up at the city of New York. I'm going to be pitching why France is the place they need to be looking at. I had the opportunity 2 weeks ago to have dinner with John Chambers, the executive director of Cisco, and I got to pitch him as to why I think it's a great thing that he did with Cisco to spend so much money on France. So being able to be kind of the pom-pom girl of France and digital. I know I'm not the only one, but I really do enjoy that. And I got a deep digital background. I've been doing this for a while, and so that's kind of what I want people to see me as. And so if you look online, hopefully that's what you guys are going to find. How can I help others? So right away, I started thinking, okay, I've got to give back to this ecosystem, right? It's not a one-way street. I need to really start doing things. And so the first thing I did was I started an event called Startups Calling. We've done 4 of them now, and they're really in a time where we find founders or VCs or somebody to come and kind of give the down low on a subject. We don't want a big, pitching of a product or a lesson about something. It's really like, man, this is where I failed. This is where I sucked, and this is how I got better. So to have a really real conversation between startups, and it started off small. There were like 10 people at the first one. We just did one a couple weeks ago. We did it with the US Embassy. They flew in a VC. We did it with Marc Rogier. We talked about money, raising money, and what VCs are looking at. And it sounded like a lecture class because everyone was just writing so much. It was such just valuable information. So Startups Calling, we do that pretty often. NextGen, it's an association at the American Chamber of Commerce that is bringing startups into the American Chamber of Commerce and trying to help them interact with the large corporate members of the chamber. So if you look at the American Chamber of Commerce, probably 70% of its membership are CAC 40 or very big consultants that work directly with the CAC 40. We're now bringing in startups so that they're working directly with the IBMs, Cisco's, General Electric. And so I co-founded that. I'm still the chair. And we do as much work as we can to try to connect our members with the big companies. Because it goes back to an American reference is gold, right? So we figured, hey, we've got all these American references. Maybe we can really help the community engage and grow. And also these big corporate clients, they're eager to be a member of NextGen because they're still trying to figure out how to work with you guys. It's not easy, it's a very different culture. And so we're trying to kind of bridge the gap between those cultures. And the other thing is to promote US and French business. So like we said, I was very active at the American Chamber of Commerce, and I was honored last year when they asked me to be the youngest board member. We think in history. It's a 120-year history, so we're not sure. But it really was a testament to the fact that the Chamber's trying to change, and so they brought in a tiny little startup, StringCan, to work with them, and so I get to sit next to people that are much more business savvy than I am, but it's a lot of fun. Number 5, what sort of contribution can you make and feel satisfied? So for me, helping companies succeed. That gets me up in the morning. That's why I go to the office every day. And so that's my real passion. That's helping companies succeed mostly in the US and globally. And so this is my brand, right? This is what we outlined. So remember I gave you guys tips on going to the US? Well, I couldn't use the same tips because I'm in France, right? So I flipped those. So don't focus on where you went to school. Well, I didn't go to ESSEC or INSEAD, and that's important in France. And so I had to really tie myself to brands and schools that people would find valuable. Right? I found that right away. When I got here, it was amazing. People would say, where'd you go to school? And I'd say NAU, and they'd go, oh, okay, where's that? I lost them right away. And so now, they can check me out and they see, okay, he does lectures at ESSEC. He's a board member of the American Chamber of Commerce. So if you're looking at going to the US, you have to think the same thing. How do I adapt this to the local community? Number 7, your online footprint should be in English. Mine's in English still, just because it's, I'm in France, I do know that, but, it's a global business. But I do take French lessons twice a week. So France, being able to give this presentation in French in a year or so is a big goal of mine. So learning the local language is very, very key. Like I said, US references are worth their weight in gold. So we were really happy 7 months ago when we signed BNP, because French references are worth their weight in gold when you're trying to work with the French. So we're doing the same thing. We live what we preach, and we really, really understand this. What do we got here? So networking. So focus on something new. Are we switching? Here we go. So like I told you, I'm always asked what I do. I really, really, really try to never just tell somebody what I do. You guys should try that. It's a great approach. Try to find a way to give back. It's weird. I love this, but I love finding people jobs, clients and partners. Like I love it. Like I just get so giddy when somebody finds a job through a connection I made. And when you look at it through that mindset, you really be amazed at how quickly your network's going to grow and how much you can actually give back. So get on stage early and often. So I knew that was going to be important here. So I think it was like the second month I was in France, I joined Toastmasters. Do you guys know what Toastmasters is? So it's an organization. They do it in French and they do it in English. There's several clubs here in France. And the goal is to help people be better public speakers. And like I said, get up on stage early and often. They let me get up on stage every 2 weeks and practice my speaking skills. I encourage you to do the same thing. Find a club, find somewhere where you can get in front of 10, 11 people and practice what you're trying to say. It's so important to practice. And so since then, my business has grown quite a bit. So I'm not going to get into figures, but this process of the last 3 years has been very exciting. I went from the first 6 months I was doing it like an American. I was just emailing the CEO and saying, hey, let's have a meeting. I didn't know that's not how you didn't do that in France. So we learned how to be French. We've learned how to adapt, and it's been really great. We've done a lot of events. This is probably in the last 9 months. We've either been featured in, or we've been on stage, or done something with these associations. I want to highlight too, really quickly, if you're any early stage startups, we're hosting the Pitch on the Plane. People are going to get on the airplane. There's 6 startups we're going to choose. They're going to get on the airplane. We're going to fly to New York. The judges are on the plane. You're going to pitch on the plane. And when you land, there'll be a startup who's getting off with a check and is going to be working with one of the VCs on the plane. This is with the French Touch Conference, which is happening in June. We're just starting to take applications, so check out the website if you're early stage. It's under 500K. So if you've raised more than that, you're disqualified. If you've raised more than that, though, there's the French Touch Conference. And we're going to be doing 6 different startups on stage at that conference, 6 from France and 6 from the US. So I encourage you guys to look at that. There's an opportunity to get on stage. And then Viva Tech, doing some speaking stuff with them, but there's also several challenges right now on their website from different organizations that are partnering. It's a great way to look at some different stuff coming out. And I'm very happy to be able to add the family to the list today. So thank you guys. I hope that was informative.
Que la famille.